Welcome to Monkey Chatter. Before we get started, we have to say that while we think we are really smart, we definitely are not doctors, and you should not be taking our advice as medical advice. Everything we say on this show is based on personal experiences, and any guests we have on are not on to help diagnose or treat or cure any disease. Please reach out to your doctor if you have specific medical questions. And now that we're done with kind of the legalese of the show, we want to get on with the fun stuff. So carry on. Let's get down to monkey chatter.
Welcome to Monkey Chatter. I'm here with Amy. This is Michelle, and I'm here with Amy today. And we
Hello.
are, hello. And we're going to talk about coaches and coaching for the next probably, I think, four recordings. Unfortunately, we are minus a monkey today. So Lara couldn't make it due to life, which happens. And
Wait, don't we know
and
that?
right. And so she did ask us to go ahead and start to dig into this topic without her. And because I'm such a huge fan of coaching, and I've been coached, I think, within an inch of my life. I was really excited to get a chance to talk to Amy about her experiences with her coaches over the years. And Amy and I are both certified as coaches in different sort of
Very different
modalities.
kinds.
Yeah. So we wanted to have this conversation and hope that you will have a little better understanding of what it might feel like to work with a coach or to certify as a coach. Or if you are being coached, we'd love to hear your thoughts as well. So I guess I guess I'll start by asking Amy a question.
Oh boy.
So I know you're currently working with a running coach. Can
Yes.
you sort of fill us in on what is that like? Like, how is that set up? How long have you been working with this coach? Anything you want to share about that?
Yeah. Um, yeah, and I think the one thing I would add to that is that Michelle and I are going to do this recording, and then over the next couple of weeks, we are each going to have on someone that we may have worked with or are familiar with. And so one of those is actually going to be my running coach, Jackie. And I've worked with her uh, not quite a year and a half now, year, something like that. I don't know. And yeah, I have to say it's been awesome. And I give her like shout outs on my nutrition page all the time. But yeah, she's great to work with. So and she is not paying me to say this, but if anybody is looking for a running coach, she's awesome. She's Jackie Wilson Runs on Instagram. So anyway, yeah, so I started working with her. I actually followed her quite a lot on Instagram before I committed to doing anything. And then she and another running coach actually did a like a mindset type course. It was just a super quick, like, I don't know, an hour or two, something or other, every Sunday night, I think, for like 4 or 6 weeks. I can't even remember the details of it now. But anyway, after that, I realized that I really just liked her style. I liked how she, went about things and all of that. So I started did like a little intro call to a little discovery call or whatever you want to call it. Everybody has a name for them. And yeah, I started working with her. I think I started working with her last spring, maybe. Anyway, so yeah, we essentially did a call in the very beginning. Once I committed to working with her, she got an idea of like what my background was in running, any injuries, what kind of workouts I like to do, what kind of workouts I don't like to do, strengths, weaknesses, yada yada, all that stuff. And yeah, so then she started putting some programs in, and she'll really only do generally a week, maybe 2 weeks at a time at most, because she'll base all the future training. Unlike what I used to do when I was doing my own stuff, where you just like print out a plan online and hope for the best. It really is more like more individualized, and it's, based around, like, how did your run go? If it really sucked and you're really tired and you've had a really terrible week, then maybe the next week we don't ramp up as much as what we
Mm.
would have.
So,
So
I have a question because 'cause
okay,
I'm the
I'm
curious
shocked. I
monkey.
was gonna
I'm the
say
curious monkey. I have questions. I have things I need to know.
lots of
Um,
questions.
so generally, my experience has been with clients and as a client myself, like, when people finally decide they're gonna invest some time, money, resources into being coached, they do it because they want something to be different in their life. So what was it that you wanted to be different? Like, what was sort of the prompt to even reach out to her? Like, what were you
Mm.
hoping to get?
Wow, that's an interesting question because I think we talked about this on one of the very first podcasts that we recorded. I actually started working with her because I was trying to hit a PR and a half marathon, and, PR being
What's a
personal
PR?
record.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. I'm like, "Okay,
Um,
I don't do that because yeah, I don't even know what that means. What is a
so
PR, Amy?"
yeah, so I was trying to so personal record or a PB, some people call them personal best. So basically trying to run the fastest half that I had ever run. And I knew that I really needed somebody to hold me accountable and not, skip my runs and, work on an individual plan with me. Um, ultimately it's so funny now, and I hadn't thought about that until just now. This is why you're such a good coach, Michelle. Um, is that did not happen because of multiple things, no fault of Jackie's. But that did not happen, and I realized that really what isn't what I wanna do anyway. Like, now I just wanna run as far as I can, not as fast as I can, and that definitely has, like, lit a whole different spark now. But yeah, that was the original
Mm,
thought when I started working with her, and again, I think if you go back, it may have been their New Year's resolution one, like one of the very first ones, we talk about that a little bit, and, yeah, how that did not go as planned, but yeah, so funny to think about that now, because 'cause I'm so far away, I'm so far removed from my original thought with when I went to start working with her.
and I think that, again, based on, my limited experience, I think that tends to happen a lot with coaching. At least I know when because I started working with somebody, oh gosh, 30 years ago. And actually, Lauren Beller is the coach that I'm going to have on for one of our sessions. And she was my very first original coach. And I didn't even know that's really what she did. Like, I was just looking for somebody to help me figure out work. Like,
Yeah. So now
I
I have a
just,
question, because she
yeah,
obviously is not a running coach.
no,
So
she is
what
not.
what what is her coaching, or like what does
So
she do?
back then, like again, like 30 years ago, was when this whole concept of quote unquote life coaching started. And I have to tell you, I have a real struggle with that whole like life coach thing.
Mhm.
And I always have. But I didn't when I started working with her, it wasn't about that. She was hosting a little retreat. So it's kind of interesting how you end up into this space. She was doing this one-day retreat, and I went to that, and that was the olden days before, like, social media, so, like, I saw it on a flyer in a
Like,
bathroom or something, like, who knows where I saw this thing, and so she was really one of the first folks I'd ever run into who did that kind of work, and she worked primarily with women entrepreneurs, like, that was her
mm,
deal, to help them. She started with that goal wheel that a lot of us are familiar with, where you have your
yeah.
life and you break it into 8 segments, and so that was sort of my, oh, toe dip into all of this, like, "Oh, maybe she can help me not be such a mess at work," really was my ultimate goal, and then just like Amy said, what I started with is not what I ended with. Like, once I got into I'm like, "Oh, clearly, this is not the problem." Like,
Yeah.
this is not exactly, what I really wanted to work on. So I think that's even though these are sort of different types of coaching, and we'll get into that a little bit more, but um, it sounds like the underlying premise around it still is the client wants something to be different than it is. And what tends to happen is how you go in is not usually the thing that ends up being quote unquote resolved or achieved, or whatever your idea was that was going to happen isn't exactly what happens, right? Like the coaching takes on a life of its own. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think, Michelle and I have talked a little bit about this, just our like different experiences with coaches, because the majority of coaches that I have worked with, except for Michelle, who has coached me through a lot of life events, um, but the majority of coaches that I've worked with are revolve around some, like running, CrossFit, training, those types of things. And even when I went through like my precision nutrition level 2, I had a coach that I worked with for that year-long program. um, so very, very, different. And we were, talking earlier about like even, those of us who ride, a lot of us ride horses
Ride
and
horses. Yeah.
yeah, and, yeah, not bikes or anything, although you can have a bike coach too.
Right? I'm sure you can. Yeah.
Just the different types of coaches that are out there and how it's a little bit different for everybody, but
Mm,
yeah.
yeah. I think, yeah, yeah, it's such a looking back on it, it really is kind of fun to have this conversation because I got I started being coached years ago, right? Like 30 years ago. And then when I decided to get certified, the first certification I got was actually as a quote unquote Equus coach, right? So I was being coached by an amazing woman named Nancy Duncan, who has since passed away, actually. But she was probably one of the most masterful coaches I've ever worked with, and I met her through Lauren, and she's also the one who helped me certify. Like, you had to have a mentor coach to certify, as an ACC with the International Coaching Federation. But I remember having a conversation with her when I was thinking about doing this Equus coaching certification. And, I'm a little bit of a horse person, and I just was like, really? This just seems crazy, right? Like, hmm, I don't know. That's an awful lot of money, and an awful because it was like a 2-year program. It had like all these on-sites in like California and Arizona. I'm like, what in the world are these people,
Yeah.
seriously? Like, this is crazy talk. And you had to fill out an application, and I think it had like a $50 fee to fill out the application. And I remember talking to Nancy in one of our coaching sessions, and I'm like, oh, I don't know, blah blah blah. Finally she was like, Michelle, you have spent $50 on a bottle of wine, like, just send in the
Yeah.
application.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need I feel like that's when you're working with a coach over a good period of time, they
Mhm.
really know you, like,
Yeah.
and know all the little tricks and tools and things you do to, justify not doing something. Like, it just the relationship with a good coach can really move you forward. Amy mentioned that accountability piece. So,
Yeah.
can you
It's
dig
huge.
into that a little bit? Like, accountability is an interesting thing to me. Like, when you're working with clients, because you work with some clients,
Yeah.
how do you use that effectively? Like, yeah, what works, Amy? What works? Please help me. Like,
Well, I think the first thing is that the person has to want to be accountable.
well, it could be my
Um
problem.
I'm just gonna throw that out there. The person has to, you were talking earlier about, they have to like you start working with a coach because you want something to change, but they truly have to want something to change. I've I've had some clients where I'm just like, look, we're wasting each other's time, your money. Like you are not committed to this yet.
Mm.
Like I will happily be here for you when you are ready, but like giving me like doing our weekly check-in call and you're telling me that you just drove around McDonald's for the 3rd time this week? Like like,
Full
obviously,
disconnect.
there's nothing like, this isn't something else is going on here. So yeah, I think, like, you have to want to change. Um, and I'm backtracking a little bit now, but one of the comments that you mentioned about, like, the relationship of working with a really good coach,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking back to one of the the trainers that I had. This is like personal trainer, not horse trainer person. But man, he would call me out on some stuff. Or like, seriously, that's the weight that you're gonna put on there? Like, you know, because and again, this was not in the very beginning, but it's like seriously, that's not right. So I think one of the things, again, from the accountability standpoint is just especially once you have that really good working relationship with somebody, is that they will call you out on your own BS because let's face it, we all give ourselves our own BS story of what we can and can't do. So,
That
yeah.
sort of lends itself we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording. In order to sort of build that relationship, it takes a time commitment,
Mm,
and one of the things I had asked Amy, because I run into this, sort of on quote unquote the life coaching or business coaching side, is, how much time, like what's the minimum amount of time that a client should plan to work with a coach, just to try and make some progress. And one of the things that I've seen myself, most coaching and every coach sets up things a little differently. And certainly with all the technology now that we have, you're not limited to like, a phone call,
yeah.
twice a month or something like that. We have so many other options, like Facebook groups and Zoom calls, and all of that in addition to sort of I still like a live phone call, like that's still my preferred. Um, However, people are different. But if you're only working with a coach like one-on-one live a couple times a month, and I think that's how it gets set up because most of the work, at least in the coaching that, I've been involved with, most of the work actually goes on between the coaching sessions,
Mm,
right? So if you in order to really move the needle or feel like, "Oh, is this working? Is this not working?" I feel like you have to at least give it 3 months, right?
mhm.
6, because you have your first session is usually, sort of that onboarding session, getting even though you might have done a discovery call, it's not quite the same
Right.
as like your first, like, okay, what are we doing here and what's our plan? And so then that leaves you really 4 sessions because if you're just going to do 6, that last one is going to be a wrap up of some kind. So you really have 4 working sessions. Um, so I just feel like folks who want to like have one call and that's gonna
Mhm,
1 or 2 calls and, "Oh, it's all good," and, like, I just feel like that's unrealistic. So I don't
mhm.
know, is it the same way, Amy? Like, I would think it would be even more with because if you're trying to make a change in your body or in your habits, like, you need a little more than that even, I would think.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, it depends, like, with my nutrition coaching, I will there's kind of varying levels of,
Mm,
because I get it. It's not cheap,
mm,
and so it's not something that everyone can afford, but, I do like the the ones that are more like at least every other week, if not
Mm,
every week. And, certainly there's a lot of check-in, so, like, typically what I'll do is I'll do a quote unquote "live call," again, depending on where the person is located. Um, Live call could be either over, like, Zoom or an actual in-person live,
mm,
meeting, once or twice a month typically, and then but then there's, like, there's text messages and there's all of those sorts of, check-ins, but yeah, I mean, generally, for the first month, we're just trying to sort out what are we currently eating? What do
mm,
we like to eat? What do we not like to eat? What have we done in the past? Like, are we really being honest about what we're
mm,
eating?
mm. Yeah.
um, and starting and it is I'm a big believer in kind of the small habits and whatever. So we're not going to be do some big giant change in that first month. So it does take, some time. Um so typically a lot of, nutrition coaches will do like a 3-month minimum, to
Mm,
start. And when I do stuff with Jackie, I do that 6 months at a time. So, yeah, I do think it is I mean, it's a commitment. But again, there's the whole thing, like, you have to want to be you have to want to be accountable, and you have to want to make the change and put in the work, and
yeah,
yes,
that's the work.
a
Yeah,
lot of work in between,
yeah.
like, um,
I
yeah, and
think
it was a
that
little different. Oh, go ahead.
and I do, I think that that is something like, when I look at folks who have asked me questions about coaching or been like, "God, you make a," because I generally make a year commitment,
Mhm,
um, and I was also Amy and I were talking earlier, and I was also saying that I had taken, some time off from being coached just because there kinda what we said, like, if you're not gonna take action or if you know that, you know, okay, I've gone just so far and now I think sometimes you just need time to process it or see where everything has landed or, um but my best like, when I look back over my many years of being coached by multiple and let me tell you, you wanna be coached within an inch of your life, go through a coaching certification. Like, seriously, if you, have any interest in coaching, I think one of the things that was the best for me was when I went through coaching certification, like that, especially a good one. Like both of the ones I went through were 2 years and you're with a cohort and you really get to know these people. So,
mhm.
um, yeah, so you get coached within an inch of your life. And but I think the most, the
I felt like I
most
did that during my, CrossFit coach training, but in a way different
way
way.
different thing, like, you just needed to survive it
I just
physically.
needed to breathe and
Right.
not die. Yeah,
But
yeah.
I think a year like, those were I had a few years right in a row, and thank goodness I was actually in a coaching contract for a year during COVID, and also, when my mom passed away,
Mm,
and I credit that coach again, another wonderful coach, her name is, Sherry Hodds, just incredible, um and she I don't know what how that woulda looked on the other side without Sherry, because she, just having someone to show up with on
mm,
a regular basis and be like, "Hey, hey, what's" you know, "help me."
yeah.
Help me. So, yeah, I can't say enough about it, and I think if people are in a position where they're really wanting to make a change. They want something to be different. They need somebody to hold them accountable. There is nothing better than somebody that really doesn't know you and really doesn't know your family and doesn't know the players at work, like who really are coming at it truly and they're there for you. That's it. And
Mhm.
they come in assuming, and this is the Coaches Training Institute. their thing is that every client, before you even start, is naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. So to be in
Does
it's a
not sound like me.
relationship. Yes.
It would be giving me way too much credit.
Yeah, come on. Because we all are, right? Like, we can all figure this out, but to have somebody who comes in and that's the space that they're holding for you, like,
Mhm.
it does there's something about that that it makes you like, "Oh, oh crap, I guess I better, like, show up sort of ready to do some work."
Yeah.
It's a real the more I think about coaching and being coached and all of that, first of all, it's such a great experience to have. Like,
Mhm.
if you haven't
If it's a good one.
yeah,
Yeah.
if it's a good coach,
Yeah.
for real, true. And I guess, maybe when we have our coaches on, they can talk a little bit about, how to choose a really good coach. Like, what are the questions you should be asking? And, um, what
Yeah.
are the things that make a good relationship? I'm a terrible client. Like, I have no idea why I haven't been fired over the years. And certainly Lauren, who we're gonna have on, she has definitely called my bullshit multiple times.
Yeah.
Like, you know, but it is, I think it's something that I wish more people would take advantage of or invest in themselves. I think
Mhm.
the cost sometimes gets in the way
Yep.
a little bit. Or if it's offered at work, try it and see, how does it feel? Is it helpful? Is it not helpful? What do you like? What don't you like? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what one, I had put some notes together before we, started, like, I was thinking of some stuff over the weekend, and I think for me, the notes that I wrote down, like, on coaching and why coaching and all that, one, which we've already talked about, is the whole accountability piece, like,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
mean, for me, that's huge. There are certainly days where I'm like, "Ugh, I don't really wanna go run today," or, "I don't wanna, like, go to the gym," or whatever, and I'm like, "Ah, crap, it's gonna show up in there, and she's gonna be like, 'Why weren't you running? What happened?'" Um, and then, 2, I think just having someone to, bounce ideas off of. Because again, like, certainly I've trained for multiple marathons, half marathons, all that stuff on my own and cross the finish line and fine, but it is really nice to, like, bounce ideas off of somebody and be like, "Okay, what do you think about," like, literally just today, I was texting her, I'm like, "What do you think about this idiot idea?" But, and then the final thing, and again, this, I think more comes from the on the fitness side of things, and I don't know, Michelle, you can say how this might apply on your end, but I think just, having someone who believes in you when you don't believe in yourself and that you are capable of doing something, like, because again, yeah, this will be a whole other thing, but I am about to take on this adventure of running some more crazy miles.
Mhm.
And I still remember the day that I like dropped it on her and I was like, "All right, so this is an idea that I have. What do you think?" And she's like, "I feel like it's in my calendar already. Like it's already on there." And I was like, "Okay, I was hoping you were going to tell me don't do it, but all right." Um, and it's really and then she sent me, like, all kinds of encouraging stuff, since she knows that I'm definitely doubting myself right now and my life choices, but, just having somebody there who knows and the same thing again when I was working with Damon, who was my the trainer that I worked with, like, he certainly would put like, he knew that I was capable more of than what I knew I was capable of and would push that. So just having somebody there who, um, again, makes you believes in you more than you believe in yourself, and you are really truly capable of way more than you give yourself credit for. So those are kind of my 3 big things with coaching, um, from
Yeah,
my experience of like, of being coached. So,
yeah. It is pretty amazing what having someone and again, I go back to, for me, it was just great to have somebody who didn't didn't know all the players,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
And, and as you work with them over time, obviously you're talking about those people,
Yeah.
but
I
it's
get to
all
know the cast of
yeah,
characters.
but it's all your perspective, right?
Uh-huh.
So to have somebody sort of, ask those open questions, and, one of the ones that I love, one of my coach trainings, we did a little Byron Katie work for anybody who is familiar with her, and one of the big questions there is, is that true?
Mm,
Right? And just that question alone, like, the stories that we make up about the things that happen to us, and just to have somebody say, and maybe it is true, like,
uh-huh.
maybe because so you have that option to say that, but just to have to question, like, "Oh, I can't run a marathon. Is that true?" Like like, maybe you couldn't run it. Could you like,
Yeah.
so when I think about those things, and having somebody for me, and I think for a lot of people, it's rare that somebody takes time to hold space for you to muck about, right?
Yeah.
Like, "Hey, I have this crazy idea,"
Yeah.
right? Or and 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 God bless all the people who love us and care about us and are like, "Okay, yeah, that's great. What time is dinner?"
Uh-huh.
But this is a coach is a person that literally there's time on their calendar, and it's just for you to do just that.
Mm,
I consider it sort of holding a container for somebody, right? So you're just holding space for somebody to sort of throw that crazy idea out there, right? And sort of pull it apart without saying, "Oh, that is crazy." Like, "I'm sorry,
dumb.
I don't think that's a good idea." Like,
Yeah.
so there's just something about that, um, this spaciousness that we don't get in our lives very much anywhere else. And I do struggle with that a little bit because the thrifty part of me or some part of me is like, well, shouldn't that just be what your friends and your family does? Like, isn't that their job to
Oh,
hold
Lord, no.
space for you? Like, no. And they absolutely not interested. So, I really value and certainly have used resources, time and money, to set aside time to have that for myself, that spaciousness to throw things out there that, you aren't gonna throw it out there anywhere else, you can be totally vulnerable. This person doesn't, you know, isn't, like, involved in your life and isn't concerned about certain choices you're gonna make in a way that somebody else would be. And when I got trained as a coach through the CTI program, um, they talk about it like you have the client, it's like a pyramid, right? You have the client, you have the coach, and then you have this coaching relationship, which is the third, it's like an actual third entity,
Mm,
right? So that relationship is a separate thing that the two of you create together. And I love collaboration, right? Like, oh, like that is my thing. Like, let's work on it together. So the idea that I have like
hence
this
this
person.
podcast.
Yes, right? Like this
What
is
this podcast
something,
came about, yeah.
right? And I think for most people, like, wouldn't you much rather work on something with somebody?
Mhm.
Like for most of the time, that usually, works out a little better. In fact, I'm really missing Lara today.
I
So,
know. It
Lara,
is
if
weird to
you're listening, we miss you. We need
it
that.
is weird to do this without her.
I know. I'm like, I need and just an aside, when I was going through one of my coach trainings, Lara was my very first um, client that helped me when I was going through training. Like, you have to pick a client. So,
Mhm.
yeah. So thank you, Lara. That was super helpful. I don't know. And yeah, it's an amazing experience, and, when
Yeah,
you
I
have a
kinda think
really good
when you
coach.
have a good
Yeah,
yeah, a really
yeah.
good one. Yeah, and I've been fortunate. I think we obviously both have been
Yeah.
fortunate to have some really good and there's been a couple of people that didn't work out so well.
Well,
I'm
and
like,
I
"Oh,
think yeah,
yeah,
right? That's true, like, as a coach, and I would want anybody who was thinking of being a client, like, if it's not a good fit, it's not a good
yeah,
fit, and and not every, yeah, not every coach-client relationship is, you know, is gonna have whatever that is, that connection and that real value. So, I would
yeah,
say to anybody, like, every I don't know of a single coach that doesn't do some sort of, like, discovery set or, like, a free sort of
yeah,
sample session, let's
yep,
just chat, and I think you can tell pretty
mhm,
quickly, client and coach, like, "Oh, this is a good fit," or a good coach will be like, "Listen, I don't feel like, I'm the best fit for you, but hey, I know so and so, why don't they might be a better fit because
mhm,
everybody has their little, like,
mhm.
niche.
Yeah, and I've certainly done that with clients because 'cause I'll do, like, a little discovery call just to because a lot of people are like, I don't even
I
know,
don't
like,
even
how
know
does
what
nu
this is
yeah,
about.
like, how does nutrition coaching work? I don't even know how this all works. Like, what do you just, like, bring me food or what? Um,
I would sign up for
so
that if
yeah,
you would just bring me
but I literally have said to people, "What you're looking for is not" I'm not a 30-day program,
Mm,
I'm not a quick fix, all of this sort of thing, and so, like, I have literally said to people on calls, I don't I think I'm not what you're looking for because we have different, you know and this is why I do it this way.
mm,
Because I think it is important to help people understand, like, where I'm coming from, like, the reason that I don't do those sorts of things. But, yeah, I mean, yeah, I've literally
yeah.
told people, "You don't wanna coach with me because I'm not
Yeah,
I'm not what you're looking for."
right? And I
Yeah.
think it's important if anybody out there is thinking about, "Oh, well, I think I'd like to check this out." Know that if it's a good coach and you're like, "Oh, yeah, but they're not for me," they have no attachment. There
Mm.
is no attachment
Yeah.
to the outcome of that just there's a little coaching thing. No attachment to the outcome of that call,
Yeah.
right? So, if you're feeling that way, like, "Oh, I can't," now I'm sucked in, and
Yeah.
that's just you don't wanna feel that way. So,
Mm-mm.
that's what those calls are for, is so
Mhm.
you can just, like, say, "Mm, you're not quite yeah, this is not
Yeah.
quite what I thought it was," or yeah, so don't hesitate to reach out to a coach if you're,
Mhm.
like, afraid, "Oh my god, I'm gonna call, and then I'm gonna be sucked in, and how do I get out of it?"
Yeah, it's not a, what were those things that you used to go and like, a timeshare?
Right,
Like, you're not
oh
you're
my
not
gosh, I
there and
went to one of
stuck
those. Yeah, like a
with,
skiing one, that was bad. Oh, yeah.
yeah, and I think that's a really good point, Michelle, because, yeah, if it truly is a really good coach, they want what's best for you, and they're not just there to, like, make money. Like, they're
Get another
doing it I mean,
client, right?
you gotta
Yeah,
make yeah, like, obviously gotta make money, but, like, that isn't the number 1 goal. Their number 1 goal is to help people and see them succeed in whatever it is. Um, and, like, me on the opposite side, I've talked a lot about my experience having someone coach me, but on the opposite side, like, I don't this is gonna sound really bad, like, I don't wanna work with somebody I don't want a client that isn't a good fit either because
it really
it makes it
hard.
work, yeah, and it's supposed to be fun and
Yeah,
successful and, all of that I mean, not fun all the time because
all
there
the
will be some
time, yeah,
struggles for sure, but, like, I don't want to coach people that it's not a good fit,
right.
so,
One of the
um
things, that's a little different between sort of the coaching that I was trained to do and the coaching on the fitness and the nutrition side is that, with the training that I got, you're very much, not giving advice. Like,
Mm,
if you find your coach and you're working with a quote unquote "life coach," for lack of a better phrase, and they are giving you advice, that is not really coaching. That's more consulting or
Mm,
instructing. Um, so it's a different relationship. And one of the things that was one of the tenets of the coach training that I went through was this idea of self-management of the coach, right? Of not inserting yourself into the client's work, right?
yeah.
So not saying, "Oh, yeah, that happened to me," or "I know exactly how you're feeling because my brother-in-law did XYZ." So that for me was one of the hardest things and still is when I coach a client because I wanna, like, give advice or, "Oh,
Mhm.
did you try this or did you try" and there is a place for that if you set that up ahead of time, or ask permission. Um, However, that is one of the things that's a little different and that folks, I think, don't understand going into those relationships
Mm.
is that the coach in that instance is truly there to hold space for you to figure out, what's gonna go on and not to tell you what to do. So that's a little different and definitely for me because I wanna offer advice and I wanna let me try this. So I really had to work on that when I went through my because when you go through any kind of coach training, you um have to coach and be listened to by, mentor coaches and all of that. Like we had to, I don't know if you had to do this, Amy. We had to record like our coaching sessions with our clients. You had
Mm.
to do like 104 hours of actual paid coaching. And that was all, then you had mentor coaches that listened to your coaching and gave you some advice on, how to improve, and that always was one of my hard things is, trying not to insert my own, "Oh, well, that's a great idea." Well,
Yeah.
no, no, it doesn't make any difference what I think. Like,
Yeah.
so, so did you when you went through coach training, did you have to do that, record sessions and do all that mess?
So I didn't have to record sessions, but I had to, like do, like, three-way sorta thing. So, like, you knew that the coach was there.
Listening? Mm,
Yeah. Um, and I'm trying to think. I feel like a lot of times 'cause it was, through video and stuff. It wasn't any, like, real live in person,
yeah.
like, face to
Mm.
face sorta thing. Um, but I feel like they would, like, turn off their cameras and stuff, but, I mean, you still knew that they were
You were there? Yeah.
yeah. And then would do feedback and stuff, so,
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's that I have to say that was, like, incredibly stressful. When I had to do my final, like, we had to do a big oh gosh, it was like a big giant exam, like, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is horrible." And then we had to do, live coaching with the coach who was sort of quote unquote "evaluating you." I don't wanna say
Yeah.
judging, evaluating you.
Mhm.
And then, you found out after the fact whether you, were certified or not. And of course, I let my certification lapse, super dumb on my part because I wasn't doing any coaching. I was like, and now I'm like, "Oh, I should really recertify." And that's with the International Coaching Federation. So they're sort of the umbrella for the type of coaching that I do.
Yeah. Yeah, I have no desire to ever let my coaching certification lapse because
Yeah, that was really dumb.
I do
Yeah.
have to say I did do my personal training certification several years like, it's been a while back now, but, I did let that lapse. I might do something with that, but yeah, I have 0 desire to ever go through that program again, so I'll just keep up, any continuing ed or anything that I 'cause, yeah,
Yeah, it's hard. So that's the other thing too, if you're trying to figure out, if you're looking for, I don't know what it is on the fitness and wellness side, but on the more general business coaching, life coaching, that kind of thing, the International Coaching Federation is a great place to start. You can put in, the type of coach that you're looking for, and they keep a database and they will it brings up all the coaches, what their certification is, and, so you can be a member of the ICF and not be certified by the ICF, um, but it's a good place to start if you wanna just sorta get a feel for who's out there and what goes on out there. My, one thing that's been really great, my Equus coach training, which was more on the Martha Beck side of things. So if anybody's familiar with Martha Beck, she was Oprah's life coach is, sort of the, one of the things that people say about her. But my Equus coach training, a lot of the coaches with that were Martha Beck trained. So that has a bit of a more, woo-woo feel to it,
Mm.
for lack of a better phrase, and I loved that. And the thing I like a lot about them is they do a ton of continuing ed, and so does, ICF. I mean, there's so much continuing ed, that, I really appreciate that. So that's the other thing, if you have a good coach, they're gonna keep learning. There's just so much to learn, all the time. We just had a big session on, deep listening, right? So,
Mhm.
every time I go to something or I'm always like, "Oh my gosh, this is such cool stuff." Yeah,
Yeah, there is,
truly
there's so much out there,
yeah.
for
It's
sure,
just trying to
yeah.
weed through and figure out, number 1, what works for you, what seems to, get the results for the clients, and what doesn't feel icky, right?
Mhm.
Like, some of these just don't feel
Yeah,
if somebody tells you they can train you in, like, a weekend, run.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I don't those certifications, I'm a little like, "Really? Like, a weekend? I don't know." It took me 2 years, and I still feel like I'm not, you know, not exactly where I could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, that whole space, and it's so unregulated, really,
Mhm.
is
It's
another
definitely
thing. Yeah,
very unregulated in the fitness nutrition world for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, and I did like a ton of research did before I finally settled on my certifications because I wanted to try to pick what I felt was the best one
Right,
and like most thorough and all of that. Cause yeah, there are a lot of stuff out there. I'm like, whew, I feel like we learned that in like high school health class. Like
right.
yeah.
How much
So
are you gonna charge me for that?
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
exactly.
yeah. So, I do think let the buyer beware for sure. Like, this is
Mhm.
something where you do wanna do a little research and certainly, reach out to other people who have worked with coaches and get their feel, and, "Hey, was it valuable? Did you feel like that you got, quote, unquote, "got your money's worth," right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think those are good questions to ask before you dive in. Get some referrals, right?
Yeah.
Say, "Hey, can I talk to some of your previous clients?"
Mhm.
So, yeah, definitely. I think that's the only sort of, I don't wanna call it a downside, but just a little caution if you're gonna, jump into the coaching world. Same thing on the certification side, you know? Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And I'm just looking at the time.
We
Without minus a monkey, we still filled up a lot of time.
I guess we should wrap up and save
Wow,
some of
so
this
quick.
conversation for when we who's so
Yeah.
our first coach is
Yep.
Jackie,
So
right?
yeah, so in 2 weeks after this one comes out, yeah, it will be Jackie.
I can't wait to talk
So
to her.
that'll be good. Yeah, and she has a whole lots of things like way deeper than just running. So yeah, so that'll be fun.
That'd be great. All right, do we
Yeah.
wanna try and, monkey chatter
Oh,
it out?
oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Or should we
I didn't
just
even
say,
think
"Thanks
about
so
that.
much for thanks so much for hanging out with us."
No, we gotta try, and then
Okay,
then if it doesn't work, we're gonna blame it on Lara.
okay, 'cause she
Like,
was
or if it works with just the 2 of
yeah,
us, we're gonna blame it on Lara.
well, I
She's
don't think
down
there's
south where it's slower or something.
all right, you ready, Amy?
Okay, so ready, we're gonna do 1, 2 are we gonna try to go fast? Let's
Let's go fast, yeah,
okay,
let's
yeah,
do
because 'cause we're
that.
like northeast.
Yeah, we are. We're quick
We're
people.
faster.
Okay.
We love you, Lara. I can't wait till you listen
Uh,
to this episode. All right. So,
Amy, you froze.
oh no, you
Okay.
froze.
Right.
Okay. All right. Ready? One,
Oh, we're
two.
frozen.
Oh, ready? One, two, three. Monkey chatter,
Monkey
monkey
chatter,
chatter,
monkey
monkey
chatter.
chatter. Who you
Who
hang
you
with
hang with matters. You
No,
got that? We'll have to see what that looks like when you edit.
not
Not good?
good. Yep,
Oh,
it's
well,
not
we
Lara's
tried,
fault.
folks.
We
Yeah.
just can't do it.
We're gonna come up with a different tagline. We'll
Maybe
have to.
we need a coach to coach us through that.
That's it. Let's see if we can hire one of those. Anyway, thanks,
Okay,
everybody, and,
thank
if
you.
you have any questions about coaching, send them on over, and maybe
Yeah,
we'll get some of our coaches in July to, um, yeah,
yeah, that'd be good.
answer those. All right.
Alright,
See ya.